This is Orson Welles, and it's my great pleasure to introduce this evening, in this series of great silent films, one of the great films of all time, one of my favorites, The General, by and with Buster Keaton. He was, as we're now beginning to realize, the greatest of all the clowns in the history of the cinema. For too many years, he was under the shadow of Chaplin, of course, and for too many of his last years, he had a very bad time of it. Those are the years in which I knew him. We used to work in the old stage door canteen. I was doing magic tricks for the troops, and Keaton was washing dishes. He was a lovely person, the supreme artist, and I think one of the most beautiful people that was ever photographed. He had his own way of working, his own way of building up gags, slowly and meticulously. But this style was developed later in his career, as you'll see from these clips from his very earliest films. Keaton took his time to learn and served a long apprenticeship under Fatty Arbuckle, a much more violent, much less subtle comedian of the Senate School. Keaton initially was little more than a fall guy in the Arbuckle comedies, playing not the second banana, but even third banana, with another acrobatic comedian, Al St. John, picking up some of the flack. As these Arbuckle comedies progressed, Keaton's subtler, more carefully developed style of humor came more and more to the fore, and Arbuckle, a generous man and a shrewd one, was smart enough to let Buster take over more and more and develop his own gags and style of screen image. By 1922, in Cops, Keaton was entirely on his own, entirely in control of all his films. They weren't pure slapstick anymore. visual set pieces like this clever routine on the fence utilizing much of Keaton's acrobatic vaudeville training. While in one of his last two reel comedies, The Balloonatic, here's a perfect example of the comedy of futility that was so much a part of the Keaton makeup as he plays the Sir Walter Raleigh gallant to a young lady who neither cares for his affections nor certainly is worthy of them. Something that was to become a trademark of later Keaton comedies. Okay, now for the feature. And what a feature it is. The General. It's about the Civil War. In fact, I think it's the Civil War movie. Nothing ever came near it. Not only for beauty, but for a curious feeling of authenticity. And yet this is a farce. A farce without Chaplin-esque sentiment, but imbued with a real and very curious sort of dignity. Nobody except Keaton has ever brought us that close to the feel of the Civil War, except maybe Matthew Brady, who was there at the time and who was, of course, the first and maybe the best still cameraman of all time. This movie has a kind of Brady quality, a lot of other qualities besides. It really deserves that tired word. Masterpiece. Right at the start, before we showed you this wonderful film, I think I mentioned the extraordinary beauty of Keaton's face. Well, what about the extraordinary beauty of the film itself? Very few films in all history have ever equaled it. And on the subject, certainly, nothing. It's 100 times more stunning visually than Gone with the Wind. If you had half as good a time as I did watching it, you enjoyed yourself. Well, next on our festival of great silent films, we're bringing you one of the towering personalities in both the theater and cinema of the century. And one of my dearest friends, the great profile, who was also a great actor, Mr. John Barrymore. And the name of the film is, perhaps not too inappropriately, The Beloved Rogue. Don't miss it.